5 shocking Amish bedroom rules modern couples would never follow. What if the way modern relationships work is completely different from how Amish couples build marriages that actually last for decades? Most modern couples navigate marriage with very few shared frameworks. They build their expectations from media, from their own parents' examples, from the advice of friends, and from the general cultural assumption that relationships should be negotiated individually and continuously. The result is often a marriage in which the basic expectations are never fully aligned, where two people are operating from different unstated assumptions about privacy, roles, priorities, and what commitment actually means in practice. Amish couples enter marriage with something modern couples almost never have. Shouldn't a clear shared framework that both people understand before the wedding day? One that has been built and maintained by the community for generations, and that addresses the questions most modern couples only discover they disagree on after years of marriage. Some of what this framework includes will seem unfamiliar. Some of it will seem genuinely difficult by modern standards. And some of it, if you look carefully, will seem like it might be producing the stability and longevity that most modern relationships are trying to find and struggling to maintain. Today, I'm going to walk you through 5 aspects of how many Amish couples approach married life that differ significantly from modern expectations. Respectfully, accurately, poured in with the understanding that these practices vary between communities and that the people living inside them have generally chosen to do so as adults. Step into an Amish home on any given evening, and the first thing you feel is the presence of the people in it, not the presence of screens, not the background noise of streaming services or social media feeds. The actual presence of the people who live there, talking to each other, working on something together, managing the household, raising children in the same room where the adults are doing adult things. The home is not divided into private individual spaces where each person retreats into their own screen-mediated world. It is a shared space where the family's collective life happens together. What's the visual of an Amish home in the evening is a visual of togetherness that feels almost unfamiliar by modern standards. A single room where multiple generations are present, lamplight rather than screen light, the sounds of actual conversation rather than recorded entertainment. Handwork that produces something real rather than passive consumption that produces nothing. The marriage that exists within this home is shaped by everything around it: the shared values, the shared community, the shared work, the shared space. Amish marriage does not happen in isolation from the community and the lifestyle. It is embedded in both, shaped by both, supported by both. The philosophy behind every aspect of Amish married life is the same one that governs everything else. Commitment is serious. Privacy is respected. Family is central. And the community that surrounds the marriage is as important to its health as the two people within it. What if the framework that most modern couples are missing is not a romantic insight, but a practical one? A shared understanding of expectations that the community provides rather than each couple having to negotiate from scratch? Here is the first aspect. 1. Strict privacy in married life. The privacy standard. Why Amish couples keep the details of their marriage strictly within it. In traditional Amish communities, the private life of a married couple is genuinely private. What happens within the marriage, the conversations, the disagreements, the intimacy, the struggles, stays within the marriage. There is no culture of sharing relationship details with friends, family members, or community members. There is no concept of processing your marriage with your social network. This is not because the community is uncaring or because couples are isolated within their marriages. It is because the Amish community has a specific understanding of what belongs to the community and what belongs to the couple. The couple's public life, their work, their community participation, their household management, is community visible and community embedded. Their private life together is their own. The sound of an Amish home at the end of a day, the quiet that settles when the community interactions are done and the couple is alone in their own space, is the sound of a boundary being respected. What happens in that quiet is between them. The modern culture of relationship transparency, sharing relationship details on social media, and processing marriages publicly with friend groups, seeking external validation for private relationship decisions, introduces the judgment and opinion of the external world into the most intimate space of the marriage. The Amish approach keeps that external judgment outside the boundary. What happens inside the marriage is evaluated by the two people within it, not by their social network. Marriages in which the couple's private life is genuinely private develop an internal coherence and trust that publicly managed marriages often struggle to maintain. When your relationship is not a topic for public discussion or social media content, it exists primarily as a real thing between real people rather than as a performed version of itself for an audience. Consider how much of your relationship life, conversations, decisions, conflicts, or private moments is shared outside the relationship. The Amish privacy standard does not require complete silence. It requires that the primary audience for the marriage is the two people within it rather than the external world that surrounds it. What if the next rule, about modesty extending into all aspects of married life, reveals something about how the Amish approach intimacy differently from modern culture? Here it is. 2. Modesty in all aspects of married life. The modesty extension, how the value of humility shapes married life in traditional Amish communities. The Amish value of modesty, which governs dress, appearance, and public behavior, also extends into the texture of married life in ways that differ from modern norms. In traditional communities, affectionate displays between couples are kept private. Public expressions of romantic affection between spouses, the kind that modern culture accepts as normal in public spaces, are not part of Amish community life. This is not because Amish couples are not affectionate or not close. It is because the community's understanding of modesty includes the principle that intimate expressions of relationship belong in the private space of the marriage rather than in the shared space of community life. The couple's affection for each other is real. It is expressed in the private space that the marriage occupies rather than in the public space that the community occupies. The visual of an Amish couple at a community gathering, their interaction warm and clearly connected but not publicly demonstrative, reflects this principle in practice. They are together. They are clearly a unit. And the specific expression of their closeness belongs at home. The modern cultural norm of public romantic display has shifted significantly in recent decades. What is considered normal public affection has changed substantially. The Amish maintain a stable standard that has not shifted with cultural trends because it is grounded in a value, modesty, and the privacy of intimate life, rather than in whatever the current cultural norm happens to be. Marriages in which intimate expression is understood as private develop a specific quality of interiority, a sense that the relationship exists primarily for the two people within it rather than for the external audience that might observe it. This is consistent with the privacy principle in Rule 1. The marriage is private. Its expressions are private. What is public about the couple is what belongs to the community. What is private belongs to them. Notice what proportion of your relationship's expressions of closeness are oriented toward each other versus toward an external audience. Whether that audience is physically present or virtual, the Amish orientation is almost entirely toward each other. That orientation produces a specific kind of relational depth that external audience orientation tends to reduce. What if the absence of modern media from Amish households produces a difference in relationship expectations that most outsiders completely underestimate? That is the third rule. 3. No influence from modern media on relationship expectations. Media-free marriage expectations. Entering and maintaining marriage without the influence of modern relationship narratives. Amish couples enter marriage without having developed their relationship expectations primarily from media, from romantic films, from social media relationship content, from the heavily curated versions of relationships that the entertainment industry produces and distributes. Their expectations for marriage come primarily from the direct observation of actual marriages in their community, the real thing, with real challenges and real satisfactions, observed up close over years. This is one of the most practically significant differences between Amish and modern approaches to marriage preparation. Modern couples typically enter marriage with expectations heavily shaped by media, by the romanticized versions of relationships that entertainment produces, by the curated highlight reels of other couples' relationships on social media, by the specific emotional and physical narratives that popular culture distributes as templates for what relationships should look like. These media-derived expectations are almost always significantly different from what actual marriage looks like over time. The gap between media-shaped expectations and the reality of a long-term marriage is one of the primary sources of modern marital dissatisfaction. Amish couples enter marriage with expectations shaped primarily by what they have observed in actual marriages. The work, the cooperation, the daily management of shared life, the way couples navigate difficulty, the way they maintain commitment through circumstances that are genuinely hard. These expectations are calibrated to reality rather than to entertainment. Whilst the expectations you bring into a marriage significantly shape what you experience within it, expectations calibrated to real marriage look very different from expectations calibrated to media templates of romantic relationships. The Amish couple whose marriage expectations come from watching real marriages in their community for 20 years before their own wedding is operating with a more accurate template than the modern couple whose expectations were shaped primarily by entertainment consumption. Marriages built on reality-calibrated expectations tend to survive the transition from the early stages of relationship to the long middle of a shared life better than marriages built on media-calibrated expectations. The Amish couple is not surprised by the work of marriage because they expected the work. And the modern couple is often genuinely unprepared for how different actual long-term marriage is from the version their media consumption led them to expect. Try to identify one expectation you have about marriage or your relationship that came primarily from media, from a film, from social media content, from entertainment culture rather than from direct observation of real relationships. That identification is the beginning of the calibration that Amish couples have, automatically from growing up observing real marriages in their community. What if the clear division of roles in Amish marriage, the thing that most modern observers find most difficult to accept, actually produces a form of stability that ambiguity-based role negotiation struggles to achieve? That is the fourth rule. Outro 4, clear and distinct roles within marriage role clarity. The Amish approach to the division of responsibility within marriage. In traditional Amish marriages, the division of household and farm responsibility is clear and stable. The husband manages the farm and the farm's economic activities. The wife manages the household and the household's productive activities. Food production, food preservation, childcare, household maintenance. Both roles are understood as essential. Neither is understood as superior or inferior. They are simply different areas of responsibility within a shared enterprise. This clarity means that Amish couples do not typically navigate the ongoing role negotiation that characterizes many modern marriages. The continuous renegotiation of who does what, who is responsible for which decisions, whose career takes priority in which circumstances. The framework is established. The roles are understood. The daily operation of the marriage happens within a stable structure rather than a continuously renegotiated one. The visual of an Amish married couple on a typical day, each managing their respective domain with the competence they have spent years developing, coordinating where the two domains intersect, is a visual of a system that works precisely because the structure is clear. Role ambiguity in marriage is a significant source of conflict and dissatisfaction in modern marriages. When the division of responsibility is unclear or continuously contested, significant daily energy goes toward negotiating rather than toward actually managing the responsibilities. The Amish role clarity eliminates most of this negotiation energy and redirects it toward actual management of the farm and household. Marriages with clear role structures tend to operate more efficiently and with less daily friction than marriages in which roles are continuously negotiated. This is not an argument for any specific role structure. The Amish structure reflects their specific community context and is not the only possible clear structure. It is an argument for clarity itself. Clear shared understanding of who is responsible for what produces less conflict than ambiguity. Have an honest conversation with your partner this week about which areas of your shared household have clear responsibility assignment and which are ambiguous. Ambiguity is often the source of recurring friction that both people attribute to other causes. Just clarifying responsibility, even on small things, reduces that friction immediately and measurably. What if the fifth rule, about the purpose and orientation of marriage itself, is the one that most clearly explains why Amish marriages last when so many modern ones do not? Here it is. 5. Marriage oriented toward family and long-term purpose. Purpose-centered marriage. How Amish couples understand what marriage is for and why it produces lasting commitment. In traditional Amish communities, Marriage is understood as a commitment whose primary purpose is the building of a family and household within the community. It is not primarily understood as a romantic fulfillment arrangement, a relationship whose primary purpose is the ongoing satisfaction of each partner's individual emotional needs. It is understood as a practical and community-embedded commitment whose purpose extends beyond the couple to include their children, their household, their community contribution, and the continuation of the family's role in the community across generations. This does not mean Amish marriages are loveless or that affection and partnership are absent. It means that the foundation of the commitment is not primarily emotional fulfillment, which is variable and can diminish, but purpose and community commitment, which can be maintained through circumstances that would erode an affection-only foundation. The visual of an Amish couple who have been married for 40 or 50 years, still working together, still embedded in the same community, in their lives woven together in ways that go far beyond their feelings for each other in any given season, is the visual of a purpose-centered commitment that has held through the full range of what a long life actually contains. Modern marriage is often understood primarily as a romantic fulfillment arrangement, a relationship that should continue as long as both partners are satisfied with the emotional rewards it provides and that it is appropriate to exit when those rewards diminish. This understanding makes marriage fundamentally conditional on the ongoing presence of positive feeling, which no long-term marriage can consistently maintain. Purpose-centered marriage, the understanding that the commitment serves goals larger than the moment-to-moment emotional satisfaction of the couple, provides a foundation that can hold through the seasons when emotional satisfaction is lower. Marriages oriented toward shared purpose, family, community, the long-term project of building something together, tend to survive difficulty better than marriages oriented primarily toward individual emotional fulfillment. The Amish community's consistently high marriage stability rates reflect this orientation. Purpose-centered commitment survives the inevitable seasons of difficulty that every long marriage contains. Fulfillment-only commitment often does not. Ask yourself honestly what you would say if someone asked you what your marriage is for. Not what it feels like, what it is for. That question, and the clarity or lack of clarity with which you can answer it, tells you something important about the foundation your commitment is built on. I want to tell you about the conversation that changed how I thought about every aspect of Amish marriage. I had been learning about Amish life for about 2 years when I found myself in a long conversation with a woman who had been married in an Amish community for 31 years. She had raised 7 children. She was still farming alongside her husband on the same land where they had started. She described her marriage the way people described long careers they were still invested in, with the specific mixture of satisfaction and realism that comes from having done something genuinely demanding for a very long time. When I asked her what she thought was the most important difference between how Amish couples approached marriage and how she observed modern couples approaching it, she thought about it for a long time before she answered. She said, "We know what it is for before we start. Most of the people I see from the outside don't seem to know that. They know what they want it to feel like, but that's not the same thing." I sat with that for a while. She continued, "When something is hard, and marriage is always hard sometimes, you need something more than how you feel about it. You need to know why you are doing it. We know why. The farm needs us both. The children need us both. The community needs families that hold together. That's why." I said, "That sounds very practical." She said, "What else would it be?" I drove home thinking about how many conversations I had heard about what a marriage should feel like, and how few I had heard about what a marriage should be for. The Amish have a clear answer to the second question. Most modern couples have a much more developed answer to the first one. I still do not think one approach is simply right and the other simply wrong, but I do think the question she was implicitly asking is one that more people should be asking. Not instead of the feeling question, 3 common misunderstandings about Amish marriage that most outside observers bring to the topic. Assuming clear role structure indicates inequality. The Amish role division in marriage, the husband managing the farm, the wife managing the household, reflects a specific division of responsibility rather than a hierarchy of value. Both roles are understood as essential to the functioning of the family enterprise. Neither is considered superior. The clarity of the structure is the point, not a ranking of which role matters more. Equating role clarity with inequality is a misreading that imposes one cultural framework onto a different one. Assuming privacy means isolation. The Amish emphasis on keeping marriage private does not mean couples are isolated within their marriages or that they have no support when difficulties arise. The community provides support through the church structure, through family relationships, and through the bishop and ministers who are available for guidance when couples face genuine difficulty. Privacy means the details of the marriage stay within it. Not that couples face challenges entirely alone. The distinction is significant. Assuming purpose orientation means absence of affection. Describing Amish marriage as purpose-centered rather than primarily romance-centered does not mean Amish marriages lack warmth, closeness, or genuine affection between partners. It means the foundation of the commitment is not conditional on the continuous presence of those feelings. The affection exists and is real. The commitment does not depend on it being continuously present at high intensity in order to hold, which is what makes the commitment capable of lasting through the full range of what a long life actually produces. Here is what connects all 5 of these aspects of Amish married life and why they form a coherent approach rather than a list of unrelated rules. Every aspect of the Amish approach to marriage, the privacy, the modesty, the freedom from media-shaped expectations, the role clarity, the purpose orientation, serves the same goal: the building of a stable, functional household that is deeply embedded in a community and that is capable of lasting through the full range of what a shared life actually contains. Modern marriage culture has moved progressively toward individualization, toward the understanding that each couple should construct their own marriage framework from scratch, negotiate their own roles continuously, and maintain the relationship primarily on the basis of ongoing emotional satisfaction. This approach produces a great deal of flexibility and individual freedom. It also produces a great deal of instability. Marriages that are well designed for the early stages of a relationship and poorly designed for the long middle of a shared life. The Amish approach sacrifices some of that flexibility in exchange for a stability framework that has been refined through generations of practical use. The rules are not arbitrary. They are the accumulated practical wisdom of a community that has been figuring out how to make marriages last for a very long time. Nothing about the Amish approach is mandatory for anyone outside the community, but the questions it raises about purpose, about privacy, about role clarity, about the difference between what marriage should feel like and what it should be for, are questions worth asking regardless of which specific answers you arrive at. Self-sufficiency applies to relationships as much as to farms. Building a marriage that does not depend entirely on external systems, media narratives, social network validation, or an ongoing renegotiation of every expectation produces the same kind of resilience in a relationship that building your own food supply produces on a farm. It holds when the external conditions change because it was designed to hold independently. 5 aspects of Amish married life that differ significantly from modern relationship norms. Strict privacy that keeps the marriage's inner life between the 2 people within it. Modesty that keeps intimate expression in the private space of the marriage rather than the public space of the community. Freedom from media-shaped expectations that allows reality-calibrated commitment rather than entertainment-calibrated fantasy. Clear role structure that eliminates ongoing negotiation friction. And purpose orientation that provides a foundation capable of holding through the full range of what a long marriage actually contains. The insight worth carrying from this video is not that you should adopt Amish practices. It is that the questions underlying those practices, what is this marriage for? What stays private? What do we each understand our responsibility to be? Are worth asking clearly and answering honestly, regardless of what answers you arrive at. Start with one question this week. Ask your partner what they think your marriage is for. Not what it should feel like, but what it is for. The conversation that follows will tell you more about whether you have a shared framework than anything else you could do. If this video gave you something worth thinking about, share it with someone who is navigating their own relationship questions. The Amish figured out a framework for lasting commitment generations ago. The questions it raises deserve to travel further than they currently do. Before you go, I want to ask you one honest question. Which of these 5 aspects of Amish marriage surprised you most? The one you least expected to find a reasonable explanation for? Drop it in the comments. I read every one, and the answers consistently reveal what people are actually looking for from relationships that modern culture is not providing. And next week, I am going to take you inside how Amish marriages actually work in practice, the ceremony, the first years of the new household, the community support structure, and what the research actually shows about longevity and satisfaction in Amish marriages compared to the broader American average. The numbers are more interesting than you expect. That is next week. Be there.